everyone! So this is going to be my video on Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman being appointed the executive directors of Raw and SmackDown moving forward from July 1st onward. News broke a few days ago that Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff have been appointed these big prestigious roles because, of course, Vince trusts them because they are two of the most influential people in the wrestling industry ever. Paul Heyman, of course, being the owner of ECW, the original ECW, and of course, Eric Bischoff being the executive vice president of WCW throughout the Monday Night Wars. Both of these men have a laundry list of accolades to their name. Their resumes are stacked, so it makes sense for Vince McMahon to turn to these men to hire them for the executive director, which basically is a fancy term for overseeing the creative team. They're going to be in charge of creative. So Eric Bischoff is going to be on SmackDown. Paul Heyman is going to be overseeing Raw. And I think that is perfect because Paul Heyman already has a rapport with the Raw roster with being Brock Lesnar's advocate. So he obviously is, quite close to a lot of the talent. So he probably already has a good idea what to do with a lot of underused talents right now. And Eric Bischoff is great for SmackDown because he has a rapport with big networks like TNT. He did that for years. So he's basically doing the same thing he did back in the 90s now in 2019, except not being an on-screen character. He's going to be, backstage handling the creative for the SmackDown roster, and I think that's great. So I can't say much yet because obviously it's not underway. It starts tomorrow night with Paul Heyman starting with Raw and then Bischoff starting with SmackDown. I will say a couple key points that I'm thinking about right now. Good on Vince for doing this, even though Vince still has the final say. So regardless, whoever runs the show, if it doesn't pass Vince, it's not getting finalized. So you got to keep in mind certain things about that. That kind of annoys me. But on the flip side, I'd like to think that Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff are so established that they wouldn't sign on this role if their creative direction was being underrepresented. So I'd like to think Vince is going to be a lot more lenient with two of the most influential men in the wrestling industry ever. So hopefully Vince kind of pulls his horns back a little bit and lets other people have a little bit more say and a little bit more influence in the creative direction, because both of these men, Bischoff and Heyman, whether I like them or I don't, I think both of them have a lot of respect and love for the industry, and I think both of these guys will do the best they can. I mean, granted, these guys are working from the ground up because the ratings have been so insanely bad. What I like to tell people is that with Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman, you got to give them a little bit of leeway here because it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So it's not going to happen overnight with the ratings getting better and the storylines being amazing right away. I want to give them to at least SummerSlam to see what they can do in, 6 to 8 weeks. Because the thing is, you're going to throw these guys in a role like this, such a big role, but the company is so bad right now. The ratings are so low. The ticket sales are so low. Stomping Grounds, they needed to close off 2/3 of the arena because ticket sales were so disgustingly low. And it's a shame that in 2019 that it has to come to this. So, of course, you got to think about AEW on the rise. This is the perfect time to bring in two of the most influential men in the industry to help revive the business for WWE and the company as a whole. And I think that they have to do it now. Otherwise, I'm very worried for WWE. I am very hopeful that Bischoff and Heyman can turn the company around tenfold. And I think they will be amazing on their respective brands. And I think, Heyman and Bischoff, my main thing, what I would change, they need to focus on more women's wrestling. Enough of these 3-minute matches. The thing is, we got a glimpse of women's wrestling being at the forefront, but that's only because Ronda Rousey was there. You know, I want them to focus on the women and give them good storylines, give them good adequate time in the ring, not 3-minute matches. We'd like to see 15-minute matches, okay? I'm not saying every single match, but I mean, make these matches worth something, make them notable, you know? I think Heyman and Bischoff are more with it, so to speak, than Vince McMahon is. Vince McMahon, you know, claimed that he was a genius, blah, blah, blah. Maybe back in the day, but now he just does not have his finger on the pulse anymore. He doesn't know what's hip. He doesn't know what's trendy. And he's just really struggling. And that's a problem. That is a huge problem. So with Vince hiring Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman to do his creative work for Raw and SmackDown, hopefully Vince McMahon gives them the green light to do what they feel is best for their respective brands. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, what do you think about Triple H? Triple H is doing great. He's focused on his baby, and his baby is NXT. And not to be shady or throw shade to Triple H, but NXT needs some work. It needs a little bit of a facelift. A lot of you are asking my opinion on whether or not Triple H should be included in the Bischoff and Heyman executive director role on the main roster. And I actually have to say no, because I know Triple H is going to take over the company eventually, of course. But I think that Triple H really needs to focus on NXT. And this is no shade to Triple H, because I do think that Triple H has very good creative direction. But I feel like NXT is kind of tanking too. There was a point where I was so excited to watch every single week of NXT TV. And to be quite honest with you, I haven't watched in weeks. You know, of course I watch the takeovers because they're phenomenal. But I just feel like there's a lot of lack of continuity with NXT. You know, the same people constantly get pushed on NXT. I'd like to see Triple H kind of do a little bit of a facelift to NXT, if I'm being honest. I think Shayna Baszler needs to get called up immediately. I think the women's division is so poor in NXT, and that's no fault of the talent. It's just with the storylines, it's only Shayna. So there's a couple of issues with NXT, and I'm glad that Triple H is not taking on this big role, because I think he needs to focus and rectify the problems that NXT is currently facing. So I'm totally okay with Triple H not being the executive director for creative for the main roster right now. Like I said, once Vince truly retires, like 100% steps down, then of course Triple H is going to get the company, of course. I mean, he's got a great vision for the company moving forward. So let him do his thing in NXT. Let him rectify the issues and the problems currently surrounding NXT. And I think that, you know, eventually, of course, he's going to take over WWE. Now, I don't know exactly how long Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff are going to be in this executive role for creative. I'm not quite sure. I would imagine at least 2 to 5 years, if I had to give a ballpark estimate. I don't know exactly what role now Heyman is going to have with Brock Lesnar on Raw. I don't know exactly. I'd imagine he's still going to be an on-screen personality, but we have to see. Time will tell. So, in conclusion, am I surprised that Vince hired 2 of the most influential men in the industry to help revitalize the company? Absolutely not. In a day and age where AEW is selling out arenas and there's so much hype surrounding AEW, Vince is panicking, because at the end of the day, like, the ratings are down for WWE, drastically low numbers. They are not able to sell out pay-per-view arenas, which is awful. You know, I could understand a Raw or a SmackDown not selling out at these little dingy towns like Corpus Christi or whatnot. No shade to anybody who lives there, but y'all, it's not a wrestling city, let's be real. But to not sell out arenas for pay-per-views, to close, to totally like shut down 2/3 of the arena because ticket sales did not sell at all, that's god awful. You know, it really is. So you've got to take that into consideration. So Vince is panicking about that. Vince is panicking about the burgeoning AEW going to TV in 3 months. So I think it's the perfect time to establish two influential men for Raw and SmackDown. You got Heyman on Raw and Bischoff on SmackDown, which is perfect because Heyman's got the rapport with the Raw roster already, so it's not awkward. There's no weirdness there. He's close with a lot of them, I'm sure, so he's got an idea to, you know, to push certain people that haven't been pushed before. I'm sure he's already considering that. And Bischoff already has a ton of experience running a big company like WCW back in the 90s, so it's going to be the same thing for him. So I'm excited to see what happens. I think that it will improve. I don't know if it's going to be tenfold. I'm hoping, because honestly, it's very lackluster and it's really hard to watch. Like, to be honest with you, I'll have it on in the background, but I'm not really paying attention to it lately for WWE just because it's been so awful. And I just feel like it's a waste of my 5 hours that I could be doing more productive things, you know, but it is always on in the background. But honestly, this coming week and moving forward for the next couple weeks, I will be watching totally 100% focused, seeing the differences. So I'm going to keep note of these differences. I really hope that Bischoff and Heyman come out the gate red hot, doing different things, doing the best that they can. Like I said, they're totally at the ground. They're at the bottom right now. So they have to rebuild. The rebuilding process isn't going to happen overnight, but we have to be a little bit open-minded and a little bit lenient with these men and give them some time to rebuild. But if they're, you know, making small changes, that's enough for me for now. I need to see a little bit of changes. A little bit of changes will equal the big picture in a few months. So hopefully they could work on that. And I'm hopeful because I do love wrestling. I do love WWE. WWE is just in a really rough spot right now. It's in a rough patch. And hopefully Heyman and Bischoff can get them out of their hole, so to speak, because Vince McMahon has really dug a very big hole for the company and they have to work their way out of that hole. So hopefully Heyman and Bischoff are able to accomplish that. Vince needs to swallow his pride a little bit more and let Heyman and Bischoff have a little bit of say and give them the green light, because if Vince tries to stutter their creative process, I really think that WWE is going to be on the decline then, even more than it is now. So with that being said, that is my thoughts on Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman becoming the executive directors for Raw and SmackDown. I'm hopeful. That's all I'm going to say right now. I'm not going to say I'm super excited, but I'm positive that they are going to impact Raw and SmackDown for the better. I'm just nervous with Vince McMahon. You know, with Vince McMahon having the final say, that's still in the back of my mind. I hope Vince gives them the green light. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I'd love to talk about it with you guys. If you guys like this video, please, of course, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel as well as clicking the notification bell. Clicking the notification bell ensures that you're going to be alerted every single upload I upload for you guys. So please hit the notification bell as well as the subscription button and follow me on my social media at ValenaWWE on Twitter and Instagram.